Welcome on into the Cavalier Connection. I'm your host, Jack Lowe, joined as always by my dad, Jeff Lowe, and Jay Ballard. Happy to see you guys once again, as we have another great guest lined up for you, Mr. Eric Ward, coming on to the program tonight. He's going to give us a lot of analysis of what's truly going on behind the scenes at Scott Stadium as, ladies and gentlemen, we are only 9 days away. That's all that separates us from hearing the good old song echo throughout Scott Stadium. 9 days until the first roar of the crowd, the first snap, the first chance to believe this could be the year. But before the Who's run out the tunnel, you've got one job. Look the part. That's where Mincer's UVA imprinted sportswear comes in. Since 1948, they've been more than just a store. They've been part of a UVA tradition. The polos, the hats, the tailgate essentials, the little things that make game day feel like game day. This isn't just about gear. It's about pride. It's about family, and it's about being a Wahoo. The wait is almost over. Mincer's, where the tradition begins. All right, today on the show, we're joined by Eric Ward, UVA's Assistant Athletics Director for Strategic Marketing and Fan Engagement. Eric leads all marketing and fan experience initiatives for Virginia Athletics, and he's behind record-breaking attendance, innovative game day ideas, and the brand new fan council that gives UVA fans a literal seat at the table. From food trucks to season ticket momentum, Eric's here to share how UVA is transforming the Cavalier fan experience. Eric, how you doing tonight?
Really great now that I'm on here with you guys, so appreciate you having me.
Yeah. We appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for coming on.
No doubt.
Yeah. So you are a Danville native and lifelong UVA fan. What's it like now to be leading marketing and fan engagement for the program you grew up following?
Man, well, you coming in with the hard hitters. Question one. You know, I've wanted to be here quite literally since I was 11 years old. This is a dream come true for me. I decided a long time ago, and I guess I should back up. I've been going to football games at Virginia since I was literally 4 months old. Passionate Wahoo, diehard. I spent my career 12 years elsewhere, but the goal was always to get back here. And 3 years ago, the job opened for the first time in quite a long time, and I was lucky enough to receive it. But certainly a lifelong dream fulfilled from an 11-year-old kid sitting in Scott Stadium to be here doing what I do today.
Yeah. And you spoke about having years at other places. Looking back at your career path, South Carolina, Texas Tech, ECU, what experiences shaped your approach to fan engagement before coming home to Virginia?
Yeah, so I went to South Carolina specifically for the sport management degree. I think a lot of people probably don't know this, but South Carolina is the #1 sports management program in the entire world. And it's a really, really good program, and it does it differently. It's not so much academic leaning. It's very much real practical experience with people who work in the field in sports and entertainment. And a great example I can give you is that, when I was in college, the manager for Hootie and the Blowfish was one of the professors in the college. So actual, real life people and not necessarily academics. And it was tough. I really wanted to go to UVA, but my decision was, hey, could I go to this school for 4 years or 40 years? And that was why, I went the route I did. But I spent most of my undergrad in the marketing department, Gamecock Athletics marketing. And it was so funny being in an SEC school, 15 or so years ago that didn't really have the resources you would expect today. So it was a tiny department, super hands-on for the interns. I was heavily involved with the baseball program, and just happened to be kind of thrust into a role where they said, we need you to do baseball games because the guy, who was there left. Team ended up winning the national championship that year. Miracle run in Omaha, did it again the next year. Great pivot point for me because we were definitely not the bread and butter of the SEC, but we proved that we could win at a high level in major sports. And football, we had back-to-back 11-win seasons. It was incredible. But I got recruited to go to Texas Tech. The guy who was the head coach there had been the associate head coach at Oklahoma. And he said, hey, I want what they're doing at Carolina Stadium in Columbia in Lubbock. And so they reached out to me. I was looking for a career change. Never would have imagined myself in Lubbock, Texas, but man, what a ride it was. And, I was 23 years old. They threw me the keys to men's basketball and baseball marketing. They said, these sports don't matter here. People don't go to the games. They don't care. Just figure it out. Do what you want to do. And it was hilarious because I remember sitting in a meeting where they asked, what are your goals for this men's basketball season with Texas Tech? And I said, I want to sell out a game. They had not put a fan in the upper deck in 7 years when I started there. 4th head coach in 4 seasons. And I said, I really think we need to sell out a game and give people a taste of what basketball at a high level could be like at Lubbock. And they laughed. It's not going to happen here. Never will happen here. 5.5 years later, that same team played for a national championship. We're all familiar with that story.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so you asked the question, how does that, impact me? That impacts me in a very high level because I saw it happen. I saw it go from we're laughing about this, it'll never happen, to competing for national championships like that. And I truly believe that that's the trajectory we need to be on here at UVA. And man, there's a lot of people who believe in that we got to pour our money and resources and time and energy into football to get us to where, we did with baseball here. We did with men's basketball here. We can do it. We just got to all be together. But to wrap that up, I spent 5.5 years at East Carolina prior to coming to UVA. Amazing fan base. I was with the football and baseball programs there, and they gave me a lot of keys. I was the marketing guy, licensing, fan experience, branding, social media. I did a whole bunch of different things. And so fortunately, we got everything kind of rocking and rolling there, and this job came open. I was really lucky to come here in the summer of 22.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. You were at Texas Tech while Mahomes was there. Did you you got any good Mahomes stories you can share?
I do. It's funny you asked that. So Texas Tech did a little bit differently. We were actually on recruiting visits in a lot of our sports with the athletes. I think the message they were trying to send in Lubbock was it was a family atmosphere. As you guys could probably imagine, most of our recruits were from Dallas and San Antonio and Houston and 5.5, 7, 8 hours away. So selling the family atmosphere was critical to get people to come in out there. And Patrick was a baseball recruit. And so I was actually on his recruiting visit and took him up in the press box and talked about the fan experience. And the year he committed was the year we had a Miracle Run to Omaha, which is my first year there. We had a 33-4 home season, somehow backdoored our way into hosting a super regional against College of Charleston and won 2 games, 1-0. His recruiting visit was the weekend that we did that, and he committed. And so it's so funny to me because you see all the success he's had, but I just remember him as this, scrawny, lanky kid talking about being an elite level pitcher. His dad was a pitcher in the pros for a while. The one thing I'll say about Patrick, he sends messages. I don't know how many people he does it to. I'm assuming a lot of people because he's such a great guy, but he sends me messages at least every other month. How are you doing? I saw your kids are born. He talks about the Who's, like he watches our games and he'll be like, when we had the game, the tragedy, he reached out immediately and was, hey, this is really cool. Appreciate that. He's a great guy to have. And I know he does that for a lot of people, but it's pretty cool to have been there during those years when he was just putting up these huge numbers and everybody said, oh, it's the air raid. He's not that special. He was pretty special. So it's worked out okay for him, I think.
It has.
That's pretty awesome.
I like to think I have my own Mahomes story, but I can't be sure. I was a bat boy with the Norfolk Tides when his dad was on the Tides. And the kids, guys had kids out there all the time, but I couldn't tell you if it was Pat Mahomes. But I'm like, I'm sure he was out there in the outfield with me one day shagging balls, But,
I think that was his reputation, right? He was always with dad, at all the different games. That's pretty cool.
But so out of all your stops, which of those do you think is most close to like how UVA is and why?
I think great question. I think they're all similar in a way where completely different cultures, to be clear, all 4 very different cultures, but similar in the sense of in the branding within the conference, right? It's always a school that could do a lot, does do a lot, but there's always maybe the one sport that you think could be a little bit better. And I think for us, that's football, where it feels like we could be just a little bit better, and it's getting there. I mean, I'm super encouraged by the resources, the investment. But it's interesting because we're not talking about LSU and Texas and schools like that. But we can beat those schools in the different sports we play in. And you look at us in the ACC, what we've accomplished, especially in men's basketball and baseball, we've proven that. And now it is how do you complete it? How do you complete the triumvirate and do it in all 3 of the super high visibility sports? And, candidly, the schools I've been at, that's never really been the case. So I think it's similar in that regard where there's varying levels within, the programs within their respective conferences. Culturally, it's different. I always use the analogy that every school across the whole country is 60% of the fan base and how you interact with them is the same. 20% is based on kind of the region and the type of people there. And 20% is specific to the individual school. And so, I'm obviously intricately familiar with Virginia as a native and lifelong Wahoo, but, it's interesting kind of going in the different regions and just seeing how people interact with sports. And one example I'll give all the time is the other 3 schools I've been at are super unified in what they want. They have priorities, whether it be baseball at East Carolina, football at Texas Tech, certainly when I got there, South Carolina. Virginia wins in so many sports and has different pockets of the fan base that really care about different sports. And so it's fascinating because things that may be obvious at other schools maybe aren't so obvious here. And that's not a bad thing. It's not something I'm criticizing, but it is unique to UVA that, we truly need to try to be competitive in every sport, because it's obvious to us here as UVA fans, but you go to other places and they're like, don't worry about it. If we have seen teams that don't have success in a lot of these other sports, it's okay. Not the case here. And so that is a factor to a lot of things we do. And it's a fun challenge.
Yeah. And so in your first full year, UVA athletics set attendance records across multiple sports. What strategy do you think it was, or what led to that success?
Jeff, I think a big thing is just listening to the fans. And I don't mean this to be critical to anybody who has been here for a long time or was here before, but my first year, I should back up. My first year in 22, I got here right before the football season. And the ask that was made of me was, we're going to execute a plan that had already been laid out before. But they said, take this year to really evaluate the fan experience and understand where people are coming from. And, I'm somewhat familiar, obviously, as a Virginia fan, but I hadn't been going to games regularly at UVA for 15 years, other than spurts here and there. And I looked at the first couple games in football, and I'm checking through this box. I'm like, okay, you go on our ticket website, and it's hard to understand what tickets you're buying, where they're at, what they're priced at. You end up finally figuring out your tickets. There's no immediate parking information. You have to go hunt for, where do I park on game days? How do I get there? You figure that out finally through whatever means you get the information. You get to, JPJ, you decide, okay, well, I'm going to go park there. It's free. Great. Then you realize there's no shuttle, and you got to schlep it up Alderman Road. You don't realize that, right? And then you get this 24-minute walk to Scott Stadium. You haven't downloaded your tickets yet, and nobody's prompted you to do so. So you try to do it at the stadium gates. There's no Wi-Fi. There's no connectivity. So then you have to go 100 yards back so that you can try to get signals so you can download your tickets. Then you get inside, and the video board quality is not good. The sound system quality is not good. You can't understand what's being said. You sit through a pregame show that's not really engaging. The timeout breaks are basically just PA reads. Then you look at the concessions experience, and maybe the food quality is not good, or the wait time is too long. A stand has run out of water. And I remember saying in a meeting, why would you sit through this and ever be a UVA fan after this, right? Like, if you were a first-time person and that was your experience, why would you ever come back? And so I think a big piece of what we've done is really going to the fans and trying to ask, what is your experience? What is making you not come to games? What is, what do you like coming to games? Like, we have a lot of really cool things that we're doing. And I think it's only gotten better and better, but there's definitely a reason why the attendance dipped, and it's not just the losing. I mean, people can say it's the losing, and I think that's a big hand in it for sure. But the fan experience mirrored the losing in a lot of ways. And so for us, it's been intricately involving ourselves with the fans to understand exactly why they come to games and trying to remove those barriers.
Yeah, man, you hit the nail on the head on all that. So, Jay and I have been attending games since the George Welsh era ourselves. So, but definitely have seen there a lot of those issues we've definitely experienced. So, definitely keeping up with you guys on X and your fan council and all that. And I'm super excited about, what's ahead for the football program and the fan experience. I think once you came on, maybe 6 different programs have had their highest attended programs area ever. What do you think resonated most with fans to lead to that kind of a turnout?
I think the biggest thing is building a fan experience that applies to everybody. And the expression I always use with our team is, whether you are 7 or 77, you should be able to come to a game and feel like it's for you. And I think different sports have had different experiences, and that's totally cool. But the one thing that unites everybody on game day is they want the Who's to win. Yeah. And everybody can agree on that. Everything else is a complete crapshoot. It could be music choices. It could be what is visually displayed on the board. It could be, how do we present our spirit groups? I mean, if you read the surveys, you guys would be flabbergasted at how all over the board it is. And it's great. But the challenge is, how do you make something that everybody feels it's somewhat for them, that there's a piece of the game day that I know somebody was thinking of me. And I don't know if that necessarily has always been the case. And, I think we have a ways to go in that front, but we're getting better and better each year, especially on the football front. But I think that's a scalable thing, right? With men's basketball, baseball, other sports. I mean, in baseball, like, we've invested heavily in the kid experience. We want to make sure that kids can come to the games for free, that they can come out, and we have the kid days on Sundays. And, therefore there's a family market that we can bring in. That's a great example. That's easy to do in a 3,000 to 5,000 seat stadium. It's much harder when you're talking a 60,000 seat stadium that we hope to be filling sooner rather than later. But a big piece of it is understanding that we need to make the experience capable of access for everybody, and not just the people who have traditionally been coming to those games.
Is there anything specific that you all have sort of planned, whether between last year and this year, to engage students more and bring them into games in bigger numbers?
Yeah, and first I'll start with, I think the one thing that probably doesn't get talked about at all, or at least not a lot since I've been here, is the growth in student attendance at games. Last year, we had our second highest average attendance in program history. We have records dating back to 1988. So I'm assuming better than what was done before 88, at least. 2007 was the banner mark, and we had the highest year of average student attendance since then, and it would be the number 2. Maryland game, I think, was our third highest attended game for students we've had. I feel that there's a lot of input that we get from students. We talk, and we have a committee of our own students within the marketing department and some of their friends. We're constantly going to say, what makes you come to games? What's the difference? Who's preventing you from coming to games? And there's a direct relationship between winning and attendance for students, but I don't always get the sense that that's the case for our students. At least I think we're starting to build an experience that they're excited to come to games for the social experience. Now, we got some work to do for the second half retention, for sure. That is a big piece and an area of priority for us. But, we're at least getting them through the gates and getting the experience, which hasn't always been the case. As far as plans for students this year, one big change that I'm really excited that we have on board this year is we got the confirmation that 2 of the concession stands, the 2 that are closest to the Hill and student section this year, will accept their dining dollars. I don't know what the name of the program is, but they'll actually be able to swipe their cards this year to buy food in the stadium, which I think is a big piece of feedback we've gotten. Not a lot of these kids don't have a lot of money at their disposal, but they have, these cards that are just swipe and pay. So I think that's going to be a big change. We're going to continue to focus on incentives with the Sabre Rewards programs for pregame, as well as second half retention, maybe select games where we'll do scan outs. We've instituted a program since I've been here that are jerseys that they can, like, actual jersey giveaways that they can wear. And so those have been extremely popular. I mean, we have students that line up for those. So we're starting to get to the point where every game, there's a reason. There's some sort of incentive that's keeping them there. Hopefully we're crafting a fan experience that keeps them coming. But I think the dining dollars one will be huge for us this year to get them out to the stadium, because that's always an excuse why people leave, is they're hungry.
Yeah, no, I think that could be very successful. Speaking as a college student myself, I can tell you any way to attract a college student, food, and making it easier to get. So I think that could be very successful for you guys.
No doubt.
So you tweeted a few weeks ago about record-breaking season ticket sales and the potential for a 10% bump. What do you think is driving that increase the most, and has it continued since that tweet?
Yes, it definitely has continued, and I'll get to the numbers in a second. I think our fans are smart, and I think they have realized over years when there's rosters that are going to compete and rosters that aren't. And I think we all, put on the orange and blue glasses about August, and we get excited. We think we're going to go 11-0 or 12-0, 11-1. But I think there's a bit of a realistic skepticism that fans have most years. I give immense credit to everybody involved with the football program for putting together a roster in short order this offseason that I think people realize can compete. Now, how good they're going to be, we'll see, right? That's why you play the games. But it feels like there's a different energy around the program. There's a different sense of urgency with the roster that's been built. And I don't know if you guys got a chance to check out Carla's first podcast where she talked about the investment in football, but one of the things she specifically talked about was how this is the first year we're truly invested in NIL. And I know people can have their opinions on that for certain. Like there's, should we have been the first to this? Maybe. But, we wanted to do it the right way. And the result of that is we were immediately able to build a roster that was drastically better than the one we had last year. I'm extremely bullish on the team. I feel like they're going to compete. I mean, I mentioned in one of the other interviews I did recently, we had media days with the players. We do every summer. There's a 4-day stretch where every player comes through and we do the car wash, green screen shoot, white screen shoot, Q&As, things like that. And, the last 3 years I've gone through that where, the last question I always ask in the interviews with the players is, what are your goals for the season? And most of the time it's, I want to graduate. I want to have 1,000-yard season. I want to win games, but I want to get married. I'm excited to start my life as a husband. There's all these things. This year, every single player is, I want to win the ACC and go to the playoffs. And whether that happens or not, the mission is very clear for them, at least, that they understand that their goal every day is to work towards winning the ACC and going to the playoffs. And, I hope that's the case. Like, it's really fun to hear that, because I've been at schools where that is the type of mission where, every day it's that. And that part is really, really exciting. There's a first part of that question I'm trying to get back to now, and I'm trying to remember that now.
About the season ticket increase?
Yes. So we are now at over 2,500 new season ticket holders for this year. That is a really big leap for us. It's a very good, healthy number. Depending on how we close, which I think we're continuing to grow, the gap between this and other years is getting wider and wider in a good way. We should be over 3,000 new season ticket holders when it's all said and done. And that would put us at our second highest gain since the 2004 season. So we're about to surpass the year after the Peach Bowl. I think it was 2012. That's the number we're about to beat. And then only 2019 would be ahead of us at this point.
Wow.
In that span.
Is there like a goal number of season tickets that, in a perfect world scenario, we are selling out the stadium? What's that number for season tickets?
Yeah, realistically, you get to the point where it is possible to sell out every game. We would probably need to be at 32 to 35,000 season ticket holders. There was a point where we were at 38 or 39,000 season tickets, wow, which was inclusive of some of them were trade tickets, some of them were comp tickets, and obviously a lot of paid tickets. But there was a point where it was up at 38 or 39,000 when, the early years with the expansion, when we were selling out basically every game. Today, the model has changed. This is not unique to UVA. The model has changed that season tickets are much harder to sell generally. Like, we obviously started losing at a not great time when TVs came online, and the HD TV and the broadcasts get a little bit better every year. And so now the fact that you can stream every game on your phone, or you can stream, heck, with YouTube TV, 4 games at one time on your phone in the quad box, it's a legitimate challenge. And so the season ticket number to get to that is probably a little bit unrealistic. I don't know how many schools are setting, at least for football, season ticket records, barring the absolute top of the top programs. But that being said, the interest in the sport has never been higher. So there's a lot of people who pay attention to our games. They follow our games. It's just changed the model on how we have to approach them. So, if we could get to 30 to 35,000 season tickets, we would be in a great place to actually try to sell out every game. It's going to take a little bit of time to get there, though.
Sure. So this was obviously nothing to do with anything you would have done. You were still probably attending games at this point, but a lot of the older fans still talk about the unpopular reseeding that was, it was 15, 20 years ago. Some of those guys can tell you the exact day I think that it came out that they were going to reseat at the stadium. Is there anything that you guys can do or have done to kind of reach out to those that, hey, we sat in these seats for 30, 40 years and we didn't get it. We don't sit there anymore because of the amount that we had to donate or something like that.
Yeah. So first I'll empathize with that. My dad he graduated in 1979 from McIntyre. He bought seats when the upper deck was built. And we had those basically entire childhood, 4 months old, going up the steps to watch the Who's beat Clemson for the first time ever. Certainly don't remember it, but I was there. We had the same seats at section 534, row O, 1 through 4, and that is what our family had. And when that reseating came along, I think it was about when I was graduating high school, and I remember we moved over one section of 533, and so I empathize. It was totally different. we had sat beside these two ladies that were retired nurses for the entire time I was a kid. It was to the point where my parents would go to the car to get a drink while my brother and I would sit with these ladies who would watch us during halftime when we had the pass outs. And it was different. So I get that. To answer your question, I think there is a concerted effort to reach out to as many people as possible. And last year we brought on Revel XP as a ticket solutions, that vertical. This year they actually come in with the fan experience side, the tailgates we're selling. And they have a big goal of customer service. It's not just sales. And so they're trying to provide more and more touch points. The challenge we have is there's not exactly a database of those people that's super accessible. There's not a lot of great records from 10, 15 years ago on that front. So it's not always as simple as here's all the people who walked away. Let's try to bring them back. But they focus a lot on the customer service side and check-ins throughout the year to make sure we're tracking on how people are doing, what their experience around football is. And that helps inform our decisions about a lot of things. But man, if you're one of those people, I would encourage you to call into the tickets office at any time, because they will talk to you all day about anything and everything you want to talk about. They'll listen to your feedback and, hopefully find a package that works for you to come back.
I can vouch for that. I just got a call from, and I'd give the person credit, but they just called to check on me. I've had season tickets in the past and different things going on, and I can't get season tickets right now, but just to call and check, very pleasant, very, upbeat conversation. It was very, very well done by them.
I appreciate hearing that. I'll make sure to tell them, because they work really hard and it's a passion for them. It's not just selling tickets. They really enjoy interfacing with fans.
So another thing I had seen you guys were doing, a game on us for families in the local surrounding counties, and maybe $15 get-in tickets, I know, for the home opener. How does that fit into your strategy, and how are those ticket sales performing?
Great. Yeah, it's great. So it's definitely a thing that, and I should have said this much earlier, but, I'm probably somebody that people come to a lot because I'm active on social media. I'm in a role that, ultimately responds to a lot of people with their criticisms of game days and things like that. I don't pull every lever here. I wish I did sometimes, but I don't. And it has been something since starting here. I've gone to the ticket office. I'm like, guys, maybe we should try a better entry point for fans with the tickets. And I objectively, I don't think we were charging a ridiculous amount for tickets compared to our peers nationally, but I do recognize that for a lot of our fans, we've lost a lot over the last 15 years, and they're expecting a much lower product. So I get that. It's something that I've been advocating for, and it was a really great discussion we had, because we had been at a good spot where we felt this is the direction we were going to go for the season. And with our fan council, we were able to have a meeting specific about ticketing, ticket pricing, season tickets, like how do we get more fans in stands, things like that. And so, we felt a very good consensus from that meeting that a lot of them are season ticket holders. Some of them are, very prime seats in the stadium. Some of them don't have season tickets, right? But the ones who do and essentially shell over a lot of money to have those seats in the prime section said, you know what, I do that because I love Virginia. I just want to see fans in the stands. I want it to be packed. And, truly, we have done flash sales in the past and things like this that are in this realm that always get criticized by people who have season tickets. Why do I pay this much money when you're just going to do cheaper tickets for another group? It's all fair. So we're trying to do a better delineation between lower level and prime type seats versus, just getting in the building and getting anywhere. And so that was a good discussion that led us to the $15 tickets, which is now $16.50, all fees included. The $16.50 tickets for the first two home games to get in the building. I think it's $33 for the lower bowl. So very accessible, I think, to a lot of people. And then for the ACC opener against Stanford, we're also doing a 4-pack, 4 for $108. So, 20, whatever that is, per ticket. And it's gone extremely well. It has gone really, really well. We've done a family 4-pack season ticket, 4 season tickets for $520. That is sold. I think we've sold over 1,000 of those season tickets this year. So we're starting to see some headwinds there. And I think what it's really doing is converting people that otherwise come to 2 or 3 games a year to just lock into the season tickets and go for the whole package, which is ultimately beneficial to everybody. And to answer your question, we're tracking about, 12 to 15% ahead on tickets. If you look, year over year. So, there's a really, really good chance we'll have a, low to mid 40s type crowd for the home opener. I think we're going to get to a good spot where it's going to be 44, 45K, somewhere in there, which would be tremendous because that would actually put us at the second highest mark under the Tony Elliott era, trailing only the game after the tragedy. So I would love to start the season on a really high note and only build it from there because that would be great for all of us.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I was gonna say, Jack and I, and we got one of your family 4-packs season tickets this year, and so and then there might be games that we're there in a different capacity, and we're going to give them away to listeners of the Cavalier Connection. We just want to fill the seats. And one last story, Jay and I, when because we always believed, we talked about this after last season, that if we can get kids into the stadium, hopefully we can turn them into diehard Virginia fans, and maybe when they grow up, they'll want to get season tickets. But Jay and I, the first time we ever had season tickets was, and I don't recall the year, Jay, but
95.
Who's on the Hill?
Who's on the Hill?
What was it? $20 for 5 out of 7 games.
Yeah.
I thought it was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. And we're trying to get back to that. I'm sorry, I don't think I answered that part of your question. We are giving away tickets to one game. So all the superintendents that are helping us out with all the local public schools, I think it's 17 different independent cities and counties throughout Central Virginia. So it's a program that we've been doing, but it's growing every year. And I think we're in a good spot where we're getting ahead of the curve a little bit more with their calendar. It's not always as simple as us wanting to do it. Obviously, we have to rely on other people to help us out with that. But that went out to the Charlottesville and Albemarle County kids for the home opener. And it's been great to see how many people are taking advantage of that. And hopefully they come out on game day and pack the house.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And you talked a little bit about that fan council. We definitely want to dive into that a little bit. You guys launched that earlier this year, giving fans a seat at the table. What inspired that idea, and what do you think, or what do you hope ultimately the end goal is and what it accomplishes?
Yeah, so it's something that we've been kicking around since I've started here. I've definitely seen other schools, not a whole lot of schools, but some schools have done similar exercises. And, ultimately my assessment, I mentioned earlier that part of my first year was really assessing what our fan experience was. And my very quick assessment was that there was a big disconnect between the athletics department and the fan base, particularly in football, that it felt like there was a level of misunderstanding. There was a level of, fans didn't feel that they were being heard. Anything that was an initiative was not well communicated. It just seemed like there was just a big disconnect. And, as a lifelong fan, that means something to me. Like, I want to fix that. And so, we had several people that are very passionate Virginia supporters in our ranks that are in the same boat, where it's like, yes, they've seen the churn of different employees come through over the years. And it's not a criticism, but it's just the facts that there's just been a disconnect in that front and somewhere along the way. And so we decided last summer, before we even kicked the ball off last year, that we were going to do this off season. And so we spent time during the season kind of figuring out what is it that we need to evaluate, what would be the method we do and how do we select a committee. And so February, we put it out to the fan base and, it was just come one, come all. Hundreds of submissions. It was great. And I will say that, I'm pretty active on a lot of the forums and at least reading and understanding what fans are saying. The level of negativity sometimes you see in those spaces was not reflected in the submissions to the fan council. A lot of it was like clear. Yes, we want to see progress. We want to see growth. You need to improve in these areas, but it was very much in a productive sense. I want to help. And it has been awesome because we were able to take that and put together a group of 14 fans. Several students have been kind of in and out, but 14 fans, current season ticket holders, former season ticket holders, people who've never had season tickets, people from Charlottesville, people from Richmond. We have Tidewater, Southside, Southwest Virginia, Nova, all represented, a couple out-of-staters, people from their 20s through their 70s. It is extremely commensurate, I think, with the overall fan base that attends our games. And we picked people that all had different areas that they were really focused on. Some of them were about sustainability. Some of them were about concessions. Some of them were about the way we present the games in the stadium. Some of them were about traffic. And so it's been good to kind of bring together a group that truly has opinions on every single piece of the fan experience. And to answer your question on what is the end goal, we want this to be a long-lasting, productive experience. We hope that there's a lot of changes we put into place this year that are going to matter, but it's also helped us to reframe what are the priorities down the line, especially things that involve major capital investments. How do we stack them up? And I'll give an example that, Wi-Fi is an area that is certainly, it leaves room to be desired for improvement on game day. It is a 7 to 8 figure investment it's going to take to get to where it needs to be. And I think that, we went through the exercise with the fan council. The initial feedback was, hey, it's really tough when I'm trying to watch another game on my phone during the games, or I'm trying to text somebody, or I want to check a score. And we went through that and we were like, totally. But this is what it's going to cost. I think it was almost like an error pop. And it's like, well, maybe we could get by without that for a year or two. Now, and that's not to say it's not a huge priority, because it is, but that's an example where it's easy for all of us as fans to say, I want this, but it's not realistic for us to do everything in one time. And so it's helpful for us to kind of reframe what are the priorities for our fans today? What can we affect now? What can we affect next year and on down the line? And that group, I just give them all the credit in the world that they've been totally honest. We've had very transparent conversations, and it's been all focused on making the overall experience better.
Can you give us one example of something that the fan council came up with that is going to?
Yeah, I can talk about a couple things, certainly for this year. The one we already talked about, the affordability initiatives, right? That was a huge thing where we had a really good conversation about that I think was very informing on how we do that. We had a lengthy discussion about the Virginia Tech game and how we ticket that, how we treat that. I think that was a really helpful exercise that, I am somebody who is very passionate about beating that school, and many others are. So what is the priority? How do we fill the stadium with UVA fans? How do we keep Tech fans out of our stadium? And it was just really good. We went through a lot of idea sessions with that. They were really instrumental in our ultimate result of getting the tailgating, Rebel XP tailgating on the grassy spaces adjacent to the stadium. I think that we learned pretty quickly that there was a significant appetite for that, it's great if you're a VAF owner and you're parking right beside the stadium and you have your ticket or pass for every game. But there's a lot of other people who want to have a similar experience, and we're obviously, shortchanged on how much parking we have adjacent to Scott Stadium. So that was a big, fire lit under us to get that done in time for the season. And that's something that I think is going to start on a good level, but it's only going to get better. And then we've had just a lot of conversations about the overall engagement, communication. Carla's podcast would be, I think, a result of the fan council where, it was very clear. They said, we went through a lot of these conversations, and they're like, guys, you're doing good to great work, but a lot of people have no idea. And it's fair. It's very fair. So it was nice to be able to take that to Carla and explain, this is what the fan council wants to do. And she's immediately like, great, I want to jump on that. And then the podcast was a result of that. So those would be, several that just come off the top of the head.
Yeah, I personally love the podcast with Carla. And, you get so much information that you didn't have, before you listen. So I really enjoy it. What's the craziest fan request that you've gotten since you've come home to UVA?
Gosh, man, I'll give a funny example. So I read that we send the surveys out after every game. That is something that's it's somewhat standard. I think it changes a little bit year to year, but we're trying to build it so that we can benchmark, what is trending, which way. The funniest thing to me is music. And what I'll say is I read every one of the surveys 3 times through. We get them on. People start to send them in on Sundays. I usually, wait till Monday or Tuesday when I think most people have kind of put them in. And I read it 3 times through. We get about, 4,000 to 5,000 responses to those things. So it takes a while to get through it. But I read every comment and I flag every single thing and I send it to the appropriate person. And, it's like somebody's upset about the most, one urinal in the stadium is out. I'm sending that to the people that fix that, right? Now, I don't control the fixing of it. I don't control, a lot of these things, but I do try to at least get it to the correct people. There is a lot of commentary on music, but it's not what you would think. There are people that every single game say, man, our music is too old school. We need a lot more new stuff. And there's a ton of people that will go right in reverse and say, why do you play all this new stuff? I want the old stuff more. There's people that are like, you play way too much music. I want to hear the marching band. There are people that I don't want to hear the marching band. Play more music. And so it's funny because I always get requests of people say, oh, I want you to play more hype music or things like that. And my response is always, great. What would you like to hear? And a lot of times people can't even come up with an example because we all have our individual tastes and palettes. But when you put them on the spot, it's like, what do you want to hear over the whole stadium? A lot of times people freeze up. So it was funny when we went through the fan council because we had a specific conversation in the game experience about like what kind of music. And I think there was, the first response was very centric on, rap music, hip hop, things like that. The next one was about playing Four Tops. I want to hear more of the Four Tops in our stadium. And so, and these are real people, right? They come to our games, they care about it. So that's been a funny request. The one I will say that is probably the funniest though is we put a lot of time and effort into bringing back the rebooted version of Adventures of Cabman last year. That was a passion project, and I felt strongly that there was a path to do it. I think when I first got back, it was kind of like maybe not, Eric. Like it, got to the point it was really cringy, and I was like, yeah, but the spirit of it was great, right? Nobody argued with the concept. It was more just eventually the way it was presented maybe wasn't the best. And so I think I personally feel good. I mean, maybe I'm biased, but I feel good about what we ended up with. But yeah, there were definitely people who came back and they were like, why did you not bring back the exact CGI version of Adventures of Cavalier? And I had to go back and pull survey results from, 6 or 7 years ago where there's literally hundreds of submissions that are like, end that now. It is so cringy. Like, and so, that's just part of the job is everybody has a different opinion, right? And like I said earlier, the only thing that unites us is we want to see the Who's win. We haven't done a whole lot of that. So, people have their opinions on the other stuff. So my job is just to take it all in stride and try to carve out the best path for the whole experience.
Maybe you could have had that anime version visit the CGI version's grave.
And I say that as somebody that literally would run from my parents' tailgate to get to the stadium because I had to be there to see it. Like it means a lot to me. And so it's just funny because if we did that today, I mean, it would immediately be, posted on Barstool and people would be, dogging us from all over the country about what we were doing. So it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, what is the ideal Virginia football game day experience?
Man, great question. So again, core principle for me, something for everybody. I think that's a really, really big thing for me. Would be number one. Two is no barriers for why you would attend, whether it be pricing, whether it be traffic issues. I think there's a threshold. I truly believe people have a high threshold for patience on game days, and maybe it doesn't seem that way. I think people are willing to overcome a lot to support you, as I demonstrated a little bit earlier. But there's a lot of roadblocks that have traditionally been here. I feel like we've cleared out a lot of them. We have some more to go. But that would be number two is no barrier for entry, right? You want to attend the game. And then for me, the actual in-game experience, our mission since I've been here is to convert all of our in-game elements to check at least one of these three boxes, which is we want to either entertain the most people possible. So something that actually is entertaining in the stadium, it's fun, and not just like specific to one tiny audience of the fan base. Two would be telling our story, whether that be celebrating championships for other players, our pro who's in the NFL, things like that. What makes us us? And then three, arguably the most important, of course, home field advantage. What are we doing to actually get people locked in to support our team and help us win football games? And candidly, just a few years ago, a lot of those elements that we were activating on game days didn't check any of those boxes. I mean, it maybe was a very small audience, or it wasn't necessarily something that felt like UVA. And again, not a criticism of anybody who was involved with that before, but for me, it's if we can at least corral it to one of those three, it feels like there's a purpose to it. And I want everything to be intentional on game day to have some kind of purpose that we're applying.
What do you think the biggest the biggest change fans will notice this year? Obviously, last year, the biggest thing, the scoreboard. The scoreboard's huge, and it looked really good. Is there anything this year? I imagine it'd be a little more subtle, but anything this year that fans will notice immediately come week one against Coastal Carolina?
Yeah, I think the outside the stadium, I think the O Hill space, continuing to evolve that. Last year, we moved the Fan Fest out there, and I think it was really well received. But being able to actually activate the tailgates on O Hill, I think will be a really, really nice touch. And like I said, we expect that to start wherever it starts and just continue to grow. The company we work with has done this at 40 to 50 other universities around the country. So they're great at what they do. And they've told us that by year 3, it'll be at a really high level. If any of you guys have had the chance to go to Chapel Hill for a game, first of all, I'm sorry. But second of all, if you have gone, then, you could see some of the things that they've done down there that I think would be somewhat applicable to us here. As far as in venue, I know a hot button topic is certainly concessions. I think that there are definitely limitations in Scott Stadium that have traditionally been an issue. And then, some of those will never go away until we just get a new football stadium. But Airmark is a university contract, right? The UVA, whoever signs, and that is applied to athletics. Last year, right before last football season, we basically said we need to make a change. And so Airmark has a separate division within its company called Sports and Entertainment that we went and contracted to come in. And I'm encouraged because they actually understand our space. There are people who actually work in sporting venues. So the guy who's our general manager, Matt, he previously did this at Florida State, for example, and minor league baseball, a bunch of other, pro teams, things like that. Matt is who Airmark has sent in to several places to fix the operation. And so my hope, I say hope, and I mean it that way. My hope is that a lot of the changes in ways that they've invested their money and their time and their energy is encouraging. And I'll give a great example that I was in a meeting today. It was we have a weekly meeting called the Who Huddle for all of our different sports. And so I lead our football Who Huddle. That's basically the football contact for every unit in the department. And we kind of go through the planning. They're like, we're preparing to have 50,000 people in the stadium. And I was like, great. What was that number just a couple of years ago for a similar estimated crowd? What would you have been preparing? He said, I don't know if we'd been preparing for what was going to come. And so it sounds silly that that's the level that maybe it was, but I think we all experienced that and understand that that's where it was at. So I do hope that that's a noticeable change this year. They've flipped a lot of their vendors that they bought the food from. The quality of ingredients should be better. They're working with different partners. I know there's a Chick-fil-A truck they're going to bring on board this year that's going to be on the east side of the stadium. They're working with several vineyards to kind of provide a wine bar experience. Big focus on adding more beer portables around the stadium to try to keep people moving. If you want to grab a beer, it's going to be quick, hopefully. And I say all this, like, I wish I could just say this is absolutely what's going to happen, but I can't control that. And certainly, we don't know what's going to come on game day. So all I can say is I'm extremely encouraged by the effort that's been put in and the money that's been invested from Airmark to try to improve that, because, Matt sat in the fan council and he heard everything the fans had to say about what the concessions experience has been. So, we want to see progress, and I think he's going to be the person that finally gets it done here.
Yeah, so we had an episode, I think Jeff mentioned it, where we kind of spitballed ideas back after the season. And one of the things I had come up with was, tying it to basketball tickets, like your football attendance. And I'll give you an idea and then I'll ask a question. But my idea, it probably not doable, but was to once the students had to scan their card to get in, obviously, or scan their student ID. And then they also had to scan their student ID when they left. Mm-hmm. And so the longer that they were at the game, they accrued, points or what have you that would allow them to get, maybe early entry to basketball or something like that in the students. So just to keep them at the games longer. But my question is, when Jeff and I were going to the games as kids, one of my favorite halftimes, well, there was two every year I look forward to. One was when they brought out the little kids to play football on the field. And then the other one was they had a dog that would catch Frisbees being thrown probably 70 yards on the field. Are there any fun halftime activities planned for this year?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there is one for the Florida State game. I think we're going to do a couple of things that are a little bit unique and special. I don't want to spoil it because that'll be announced here in a few weeks, but the answer, yes, we are going to have at least one that is special in that way. The other way I'll answer that is that we are working with not just our marching band, but a lot of other entities on how to spice up the halftimes. And it's interesting to me because we go through this in basketball. I'm glad you mentioned that, where some people don't care a thing about halftime. Like that is their time to go to the bathroom, to get a drink, to, reload concessions. They don't care anything about what we do. And other people, it is the most important thing on game day, it seems like. And it's fascinating to me because I love it because it's just so different. And so my understanding is that there was a span, maybe 10 years ago, JPJ, where there was a paid halftime act for every game.
Oh, wow.
And if we were to do that today, that would cost us probably $100,000 to be able to do for the course of the whole season. To get back to football, yeah, we're talking about ways to do maybe more, 1 or 2 special shows a year, whether it be something that's like that's maybe, kid friendly or an engaging experience like that, or something that we pay. And so I'm working right now to see if maybe somewhere down the line we could do a paid concert type act, somebody to come in and that's a name and do 2 or 3 songs. Maybe it's a joint show with the band. I'd love to do something like that because I think it'd be fun just to see what the difference would be regarding halftime.
If you could get Dave Matthews to do a halftime, that would be huge.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I know it's not the same level as Dave Matthews, but we had, Parmalee was down in East Carolina. They were from there, and we had them do a 3-song set at a game, and it was fun. I mean, it was great. We literally had a John Deere tractor pull out a stage in the end zone, and they did the show, and then zipped on out when the team came out to do warm-ups. So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Can you talk to us about the Who's Give Back program and how that's benefits the program as a whole?
Yeah, we're working with a lot of our staff. One great thing about UVA athletics is we're a really big entity, and it's we most fans view it in the sense of football, men's basketball, but we have 27 teams, and trying to do a better job at engaging with the community more intentionally. I think that all of our teams do a great job doing it. And our athletic staff, our coaches, players, everybody really, but trying to maybe put it under umbrella. And so the result of that is where we came up with the idea of Who's Give Back. And our hope is that over the course of the whole year, there's a lot more tie-in so people understand that we, UVA Athletics, genuinely care about Charlottesville, Central Virginia. It matters a lot to us. And I think there's going back to the word disconnect I used earlier, there's a disconnect sometimes with the community. People that live a mile from the stadium, like I do, don't even know that we have football games sometimes. And I want to change that, right? Like you go to a lot of college towns and the whole town is driven by, football game days. And, Charlottesville is a great place. There's a lot of things to do. I understand that's not always the case in a lot of college towns, but we want to get a little bit more intentional about how we engage with the community and make people understand the truth, which is we really do care about people. Even if you never went to UVA, if you never come to our games, we want the game experience to be for you. And so a lot of our student athletes have taken that to heart. They've done visits to the Children's Hospital. Some of them were there greeting kids on their first day at school, things like that. And then the other side of that is, ticket components. So we have a nonprofit program where fans are donating tickets back to us. So if you had, your season tickets and you can't come to a game or two, you can give it back to us, and we're going to put it in the hands of nonprofits and kids groups and things like that to get them out to the stadium. And we're matching all those 1-for-1 in the tickets for football. So just trying to be as inclusive as possible to our local community who supports us so well across so many different sports.
Yeah, we really appreciate how active you are on social media, Twitter or X specifically. We follow you there. How much do platforms like that? How much do you rely on platforms like that to kind of gauge fans' needs, wants, etc.?
I use a lot of different ways to access it because my thing is I'm somebody who enjoys accessing news and information from Twitter, X, just because to me it's fast, it's easy. You can, click into something, like it's easy to scroll a feed. You can jump in at any time and there's activity, but I understand that regarding social media, I have to be on Facebook and pay attention to things. I have to be on Instagram and pay attention to things. I have to go scope the boards every now and then. Some of them are not so friendly. Some of them are really friendly. So, it's it's always interesting, and I don't have all the time in the world. I do have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home, so I spend a lot of time with them, and I want to be a super dad to them. But I do try to maintain activity on X, and for me, it's more that I didn't feel that anybody had an access point to anybody at UVA, other than if you went on the website and looked at an email and sent something in. And so when I started here, I've done this at all the other schools I've been at. I've kept a pretty active profile of just supporting our teams. Like I'm a professional, right? I get paid for a living to work at UVA, but I'm also very passionate about our teams and our athletes and all the accomplishments they're having. And so I try to celebrate that as much as possible. But it has definitely morphed into a lot of people will send things into me, whether it be ideas, complaints, issues. And so it's funny because some of my peers make fun of me a lot. They're like, why do you sign yourself up for that? That you're just to get yelled at by people. And it's like, I love the Who's, and I want fans to feel like somebody is listening to them. And so that's why I try to maintain that activity there.
Yeah, we can sympathize a little. We started this podcast really like a therapy session, kind of. We never imagined that it would grow to something that, not that it's a huge thing, but we're proud of how we've grown. And man, you misspell one word or you do something, and it's like that, forget everything that you've done. It's like that's what some people are gonna latch on to, is the couple negative things that you may have said or done or something. But we definitely feel your pain.
I embrace it because I want the high standard. I want us to compete and be the best we can in everything we do. And again, I don't pull every lever here. I just try to be a conduit to the people who do. And so I have my area, but I want to make sure that if people say things and want things and their feedback on things, I want to make sure people hear it so that we can continue to get a little bit better every day.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure. A few more for you, Eric, before we get you out of here. We appreciate your time. Going a bit off script here, I wanted to ask you, I think the fans are really split on this idea. I just wanted to get your perspective. I'm one of the traditionalists where I love this tradition. Is Thunderstruck going anywhere?
Yeah, no, great question. For this season, no. Now, I'll give a story with that. So going back to the music, this is exactly what I'm talking about, where
I figured.
right? Like there's people who are like, if you ever move away from that, I'm dropping my tickets. That's an actual thing people will say. but then there's other people that are like, come on, guys, do something new. So like, I get it.
I get both sides.
A big priority for mine leading into the 24 season was to take all of 23 and then the off season leading up to the 24 season to evaluate our pregame experience. What are we doing to actually have that moment that, people get excited for, get you at the high point you need to start at to start the game. And so we had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. I was kind of spearheading the effort to redo, but it was a lot of different areas. There's the band side of it. There's the football component. There's the what is the actual intro experience? Like, how are we using our pyro? How are we utilizing the cheerleaders? I mean, it was all ties together in the show. And we had a long conversation about Thunderstruck. And the end result of that was, if there was a time for us to sunset Thunderstruck, it would have been last year when we redid all the different things. And so we agreed. And the next conversation, the obvious one, was, well, what are we going to replace it with? And so the thought that came from that was, let's go to our team. There's a lot of parts of the fan experience that have nothing to do with the student athletes on the field, right? We try to service the fans that are in the stands. And that moment is a super recruitable moment. Whatever we do in the stands, like we could talk about it all day as fans of the Who's, but ultimately the recruits really latch onto that. Some of them don't even make it through a whole game. And that's not unique to here. That's everywhere, right? They may only be there for the pregame. They may be going to a different game or whatever. We decided it would be acceptable to go to our team captains and say, why don't you guys pick what you want us to run out to? And they said, we want to come out to Thunderstruck. They came back to us and said, that's what we want. They knew that it had been around. They thought it was great. So we said, awesome. I think it's funny because I do see what fans say a lot on that. And I think there's a point where maybe it would be on to the next thing for sure. But it's not always easy to make the change when you don't have something better to replace it with. And until we can identify something that is much, much better, that consensusly the whole stadium is like, yes, that's it. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
And I'll say this too, and I've worked at 4 different institutions, at 4 different conferences, 4 different regions. A lot of times people will compare what we do to Enter Sandman, and they want what Tech has, and they say, we want that moment. And I good for the Hokies, right? They have something that people recognize them for. In a lot of cases, that might be the only thing they recognize them for these days, but it's a brand they have and great for them. If you go outside of Blacksburg and South Carolina and Clemson, there's really not a lot of other places that have these things that you stare at and you're like, well, that's it. And I mean, heck, Texas A&M runs out to a Kanye West song from like 15 years ago that nobody else is playing anymore. Like Penn State, I think, is Zombie Nation. I think Alabama runs out to Thunderstruck. So it's funny to me that we talk about it in the sense of like, oh, we should definitely move on to something else when it is a piece of it and it's something we're going to continue to evaluate. But I think that a full Scott Stadium chanting Wahoos instead of Thunder is a really cool moment that is gonna resonate with people. Yeah. And for now, we're going to build towards that.
For sure. It seems like you have quite the busy career, but when you're not at the stadium or on the clock, what do you and your family enjoy most about life in Charlottesville?
Yeah, so I mentioned I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. They keep me pretty busy, so I have a lot of late nights, early mornings between them and the job. So I'm team no sleep right now, but I'm really big into time with the kids. Like we have fun. My son did soccer this summer. It was his first organized sport, so we had a really good time doing that at Dart and Toe with some of his buddies. Done some music classes, things like that. Those are fun. My wife and I definitely get out to some of the wineries, breweries, distilleries when we get a chance. So sometimes we'll take out on the weekends and go do that. I'm a big backpacker, so big into hiking. I haven't been able to do it quite as much as I've wanted since moving here, but candidly, not a lot of hiking in eastern North Carolina. So it's nice to kind of be somewhere where I can get back to that a little bit. But the one thing I do, my passion is woodworking. So I do a lot of different projects and things like that. So starting to get a little bit more time to kind of do that. I redid our bathroom this spring with my father-in-law. So trying to do some home improvements and things like that. But just a lot of quality family time. My brother lives in Richmond, so it's always good to pop over and see them and vice versa. And it's always fun to bring the kids out to the games too. That's another really cool thing that even as a fan, right? When games are not working, it's great to, especially my 3-year-old, he's starting to learn, words the good old song and UVA go who's go and things like that. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to do that.
That's pretty awesome. So final question for you. And again, thanks for your time, Eric. If you could leave UVA fans with one message about the 2025 season and game day experience, what would it be?
Well, I think that we have come a long way. I say in my 2-3 years, and I don't mean this as me. I just mean my observation as the tournament as a whole. I think there's a lot of things we've improved, and I know sometimes you see the negative language, and it's all valid. But I think we've seen a lot more positive language. I think people are understanding that there's an effort and intention. Their voice is being heard. So, give us a shot. Come out to a game. Let's see the Who's. Let's support them. I mean, we need to win home games to get to where we want to be, and let's get in the stadium, get rowdy, and help our boys win, because ultimately, if that happens, then everything gets better. And I think that we're giving people a lot more access points via our fan experience, and let's just have a good time this year, win a lot of games, and let's cap it off with a big one at the end of the year for sure.
That's right.
For sure, Eric. Well, we all appreciate you coming on. It's great to hear the insight, and I think I speak for all 3 of us when I say we really appreciate your time on social media and whatever, listening to the fans and everything. And best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you, Jack, Jeff, Jay. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you so
much.
Thank you.
And thank Eric Ward for joining us on the podcast tonight. Great insight. Me as a fan personally, it's great to hear someone who cares. You kind of interjected a little bit earlier in the interview, Dad, where you talked about we've had some of those experiences before he joined where concessions weren't very good. I've heard your experience with some of the stuff and some other, like all sorts of stuff. It's great to hear that insight of it. I'm personally glad that Thunderstruck's not going anywhere, and they really do know and they do care about the Virginia Tech game.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot to tackle, and how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So he's tackling things one bite at a time, and that's all you can ask.
And to see the changes he made, like when he went to Texas Tech and in the basketball program, how he brought fans. So we just
Really
want to get somebody to the upper deck, and then they played us in the national title. That's something exciting. Somebody's got experience like that. That's a voice of the fans here in Charlottesville, and active on X and paying attention to folks. I'm sure he gets worn out with messages.
Oh yeah, he got worn out by us. Yeah.
Yeah, and we apologize as the 1 and 3-year-old, and it's a late night for him tonight.
Yeah,
so,
we're
really
over an
is.
hour long, so
yeah, we appreciate him.
Yeah, but it was really good. But with that, that's going to wrap us up tonight. Be sure to go check out thecavalierconnection.com. Got all sorts of articles out now and continuing to come out as we get closer and closer to football season, as we are almost right there. So be sure to go check that out. Catch all the articles from myself, Jay, my dad, and Steve Brindle as well. And be sure to go check out all the social medias as well. Talk UVA Sports on Twitter and the Cavalier Connection everywhere else. What's up?
I got one more thing. So, and I know probably, once you get over an hour, it's us talking, nobody's listening, but 395 followers, Jay, we need to get to 400.
Yep.
400. So the goal for by next week, because y'all help us out, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, get us to 400. Get us to 400 next week. That's the goal. And that's wrapping us up. Go Hoos.
Go Hoos.